Now onto hubs, rotors, and brakes. So fortunately for me, these brake calipers are still quite new. I replaced these, I want to say, less than 5,000 miles ago. So nothing to do here really except knock off some of the brake dust, which I try to wipe off as best I can with some brake cleaner. And as you can see, my pads are still decent. So once I get these back on the car, I'll replace these lines because this one is stripped out on its fitting and this one was beyond saving, so I just clipped it off. So I have new hard lines, and then I have stainless lines as well for the front. And on the hubs and the rotors are also brand new. They don't even have a lip on them. I think they have 5,000 miles on them as well. However, this grease seal back here that seals against the taper on the spindle is kind of old. I think it might leak a little bit, so I'm gonna see if there's a way to replace that. And also, as long as we're in here, we may as well separate both the hub and the rotor to see if I can replace these studs with longer ones, because race car. And yeah, I have a press, so I think that's something that we should be able to do pretty easily here. So let's get these things separated and see what comes next. This way. 13 millimeter. Ooh. No, don't lose hardware. Alrighty, last one. Man, this hub is so much lighter than the rotor. The whole assembly is like pretty heavy, but man. Yeah, just this aluminum hub by itself. Look at this thing. Wow. Oh, unscrew. Okay. But these things, man, they're so heavy. Let's pop some longer studs into these front hubs. We're gonna go from whatever the original size was to 66 millimeter fronts, so that we have the option of playing around with spacers and increase the track, or just to kind of, you know, give it that really cool look with the extended studs hanging out past the open lug nut. So yeah, let's get that done. Now with the studs out, let me see if I can take out this old grease seal back here, clean up the hub a little bit of all this gunk, and then see if I can press in one of these new seals before putting in the longer studs. Hello. Now with the seal pulled out, we can take the bearing and take this bad boy out. Now we can clean out all the goo in there and replace it with new grease. Okay, these are cleaned up as kind of as best as I can. I was going to try to get these clinically clean, but then I remembered that no one's going to be seeing inside of these pockets or back here, and I drive this car, so these hubs are going to be this clean for maybe a day. then they'll get covered in brake dust. So this is good enough. A quick word on wheel bearings. So this hub has two bearings, an outer and an inner one, and they are tapered roller bearings like this. This is the inner one that goes in through the back, and the outer one is under this grease, but it's the same thing, just a little smaller diameter. These guys, fortunately, this design lasts a long time. They wear very slowly, and they sit on a cone seat here, and you can see the one in there too. And if you can imagine these things wearing out, these cylindrical rollers will wear out, the diameter of these will get smaller, and this conical surface will get bigger because the steel on each of the two surfaces will grind away, get into the grease, and that's how they wear out. Fortunately, because they're conical, as the diameter of the rollers gets smaller and as the diameter of this cone gets bigger, all that means is that the bearing is going to sit further inboard into the cone. But you'll still get full bearing contact between the rollers and the race, as long as there's no like gouges or scratches from debris or chunks of bearing in that area. But assuming that they wear out normally, then that's what you're going to see. Fortunately, on mine, they are pretty nice. They don't have any weird wear marks of any kind. They're a shiny, even surface, both the inner and the outer ones, so I have no need to replace them. And these bearings also have decent rollers on them. None of them are missing. This cage isn't abnormally loose or anything. And I had last greased them maybe like 5,000 miles ago or something, and they were fine. And they're not groaning, they're not making any noises, and they're easy to change out. So I'm going to put these back in here. If, however, you weren't in my situation and you needed to replace the bearings and or the bearing races, you probably need to get a set of I think they're called bearing punches. They're punches that instead of being round, they're kind of like thin and squished out like an oval cross section, and then you can tap this race out that way, and then from the other side you can tap that race out that way. And then you can do the typical, put the hub in the oven and put the races in the freezer trick, where you heat this up to make the diameter bigger, and then you cool the races to make them smaller, and then hopefully you can get them out in time to be able to drop them in. But if they don't drop all the way back in, then you can tap these into place with an old bearing race or some of the bearing punches very, very carefully until they're fully seated. So yeah, that's about it for these. Now here I'm going to go ahead and grease this bearing a little bit more, drop it in, and then pop in this seal that goes back here, so that this grease will stay inside and it won't get flung out onto this outer area, which you can see this is exactly what's been going on here on this hub, is that these are bits of like baked on old grease because this seal had failed a little bit, and some of the grease was sneaking out past this seal, which is supposed to seal here, on the spindle, and it was getting all over the back here. So we pop this guy back in with maybe like a block of wood or something, and then we'll pack a little bit of grease in there, and then we'll pop in the bushing, the studs. There we go, before and after. Outside cleaned up, seal replaced on the bottom, old studs driven out, new studs driven in. I suppose a low budget way to do this is to get a sledgehammer and drive these guys out by force. Though I still think that a press is a more precise way to do it, just so that you don't accidentally damage the hub. You know, drive them back in with a press or a giant stack of washers and a lug nut to pull the studs and seat them into place. But yeah, all good. Now time to repeat the same process on this guy. And now they're both done. This was oddly satisfying to do. All right, coming up on the home stretch here. So now, as long as I'm here, I'm gonna get these calipers prepared with some new brake lines. Good time to just get in here and swap these guys out. Ooh, tight. Not turning, I stripped it. Wow. When I came over here to remove this guy, the same thing happened. Stripped out, so I just clipped it and removed it with this tool. Yeah, these are brand new ones. They seem to, I think these fittings are steel because they seem to be zinc plated, and the line is copper, so hopefully they'll be a little bit more robust, but we'll see. Put a little bit of NECs on here. Nope, same thing. So let's just make this easy on ourselves. Clip this off. 11 millimeter. Off we go. Okay. And now this is off. Grab my new line. These lines are, they are the same shape, they are the same left and right, and they have the same bend on both sides, so you can go ahead and use whichever end you like. And then once you get it on the car, then if you need to adjust them and bend them a tiny bit in one direction or another, then you can do that. But for now, just put a little bit of this stuff on the threads. Definitely don't want the cast iron and the steel fitting to rust together, so let's just do this. Wrong side. And now we should be, I'm just making them a little bit snug, not too tight, and then once we get them on the car, then we'll give them a final tightening. Ready to go. Now that we've done these, let's do the soft brake lines. I'm going to go ahead and swap out my OE rubber ones for this set of stainless steel braided DOT certified lines. I bought these from Pelican Parts. They are the PMB performance ones, and yeah, let's pop those guys on. There we go. All right, got to disconnect this from this. That was a close one. Okay, no leakage. That's good. This one is too short. So let's eliminate that one. How about this one? That looks more like it. So let's go with this guy. This end goes in here. Let's secure this guy back in just to... There we go. Now it's in there. This clip has it's a spring, so it's bowed, and it has a little recess in it that slips under this this raised cylindrical fitting here, so it snaps into place and stays there. So that's how that goes on there. Now I can grab the hex on this side and snug this down ever so slightly. Tight, but don't damage it. There. Once you bleed the brakes, you can do a quick check to make sure that nothing's leaking. And if it's not leaking, then it's good. Before I put these components back on here, I want to talk briefly about these clean machine surfaces that are on the front and the back of the spindle. Back here, there's just a section a nice flat section where the ears of the calipers mount. That is machined nice and flat. And over here in the front, this entire flat face is machined. This is where the rotor dust shield goes. And I'm guessing these faces are machined flat so that this dust shield and the brake caliper are nice and square in relation to the rotor. So rather than getting things out of whack with paint thickness or anything like that, I decided to mask off these surfaces and not paint them, to leave them nice and clean. They weren't terribly rusty, which means that, you know, obviously the factory decided to leave them like that for a reason. So I left them bare as well. And all I did was take a tiny, just for a little bit of corrosion protection, I took a tiny bit of motor oil and sort of just smeared it on here, because motor oil clings very well to steel surfaces. So yeah, just gave it a little smear with my hand, wiped it off, and that should be enough. And now I'm going to go ahead and start mounting stuff on here. Alrighty, I got my rotor dust shields. These are supposed to be a yellow zinc plated color, but they ended up coming out more bronzy than I would like from a rattle can, but whatever, it's good enough. And I mean, they're hidden behind the brakes, so you can't really see them. So yeah, let's go ahead and put these guys on. They just go on here like this with these little itty bitty M8 bolts with a spring washer so that they don't come loose. I believe the round side goes towards the back so that it protects this entire back area from brake dust. And I think the front is notched so that there's a little bit of airflow coming in through the front for brake cooling purposes. So I'm going to go ahead and attach these guys on. I should also point out that I also deburred them so that next time I remove this entire assembly, it doesn't catch my finger and cut it open. And you torque these to 18 foot-pounds. Quick reminder that the washer that's back here is a spring washer. It's not a flat washer. That way they stay put despite road vibration. Once you've got the rotors torqued down to the hubs, pack in a ton of grease into the interior of the hub, all around the bearing, all around the cavity that the bearings sit in, all that. Just pack it up real nicely, because there's a ton of space in there to fill it up with. A lot of lube. Okay, once you've got both cavities inside the hub all gooped up with plenty of grease, then make sure you do the same thing to the outer roller bearings, and get these guys, the screw clamp and this keyed washer, all ready to go, so that we can go ahead and put these on the hubs, on the spindles rather. And on the spindle, add copious amounts of grease, especially on the tapered part. You can put a little bit here. This is where the screw clamp is going to go on the threads. And over here on this flat area, this is where that seal is going to ride. So you don't need to put a ton of grease on there. I just gave it like a little smear so that it lubes the edge of the lip of the seal, so it doesn't kind of roll around dry. Otherwise, most of the grease is going to be captured. Actually, all of the grease should be captured inside here on this tapered part. Alrighty. The way you put these on is fairly straightforward. Grab the hub and very slowly center it and drive it on. There we go. Now the seal is sitting on the seal is sitting over that counter bore. And now we can grab our already greased bearing in here, pop this guy in, and now it's nice and tight. And now grab one of the keyed washers. Could take this opportunity to pack in a little bit more grease. There's it doesn't really do much good just sitting out here, so I'm just going to pack it in there as best I can. Then grab the keyed washer, put that guy on there, and then you got to pay attention to this notch here. You want the Allen head screw to line up with this notch here, rather meaning don't put this on like this, you put it on like that. Then you should be able to thread it on very carefully. Your hands are going to get pretty greasy during this whole operation, so just be patient. You'll clean up later. And there's a spec for how tight to clamp this, to thread the screw on. And you want to be able to take a flathead screwdriver and while you're spinning this, still move very gently with light pressure, move the washer around. Now here I can't, this is too tight. So if I back it off a little bit, let's see if I back it off more. Okay, see that? Let's see if you can see a little better from this view. You can see with very light pressure, I can move the washer back and forth. This is just, I'm barely touching it. I'm not levering, twisting it, or doing anything. I'm just sort of pushing back and forth. And if I screw this down even more, I won't be able to. That's too tight. Actually, that's
Now see, but it's not sliding nicely, so if I kick it back ever so slightly, now I can move it around. That's how tight you want this to be. And to lock it down, you just line up this notch with the screw so that you can put your Allen key in here. And tighten it down. This is supposed to be 11 foot-pounds, but I don't have a Allen socket big enough to attach, long enough to attach to a torque wrench. So I'm just going to approximate the 11 foot-pounds here. So I just locked it down a little bit. I can still move the washer around. That's perfect right there. And you're done. Do the same thing on the other side. Once you got this hub back on and the rotor all squared away, pack a little bit more grease under here in this gap where the bearing is. Just to get plenty of lube everywhere. Okay, and then once you do that, you can put on the grease cap. There we go. Pop this guy on. This one went on a little bit crooked, but I keep. There we go. That's what just guiding the pads over the rotor. If you're putting new pads in or new rotors, you may have to open these, spread these open a little bit with a pad spreading tool, but in my case, you don't really need to. There we go. And now line up the brake line. One of my bolts through the hub, through the caliper into the strut. Get this guy started a few threads, and then we'll do the bottom one. I think I can balance it now. It's a little bit awkward, but it's not terrible. These are relatively simple calipers to attach. Remember, there's a big spring wavy washer that goes under each one of the caliper bolts, so make sure that those stay on there. Okay, now 52 foot-pounds.
Probably should have done this beforehand, but before you put your calipers on, give the rotors a good wipe down on both sides. That way, you know, because we just handled a bunch of grease packing the bearings and stuff, and there might be some residue on here that you don't want to get on the pads. So make sure you clean both sides of the rotor so you can keep your brakes working properly. And here is your finished front hub install. Got the brake line coming from the bottom up here to the top. I forgot to mention that before mounting the caliper on, especially if you have the brake line, that hard brake line that we're looking at, make sure you put on that little spring clip right in the middle of the screen on the end of the brake line before you bolt the caliper on. Otherwise, you got to take the brake line off from the bottom to be able to get that little spring clip on there, because the line is rigid and the end of the rigid line extends past that green tab on the strut, so you won't be able to get it on without bending the line, which you don't really want to do. So just keep that in mind. Either put the clip on beforehand or disconnect the line afterwards temporarily, so you can slip that spring clip on, and then you can reconnect the line. And now connect the end of the flexible brake line to the hard brake line through the spring clip, and that will keep it all retained in that location. And tighten it by hand as best you can. Don't go too crazy, because then you'll strip it and then you gotta get new lines and all that fun stuff. But once you've got that done, this is the complete front hub and suspension. As you saw earlier, I messed up that one hard brake line, but on the other side, so I can't finish the other brake line install on the other side. But for the purposes of this video, this is complete. Next step you want to do is bleed the brakes and then proceed to an alignment, which I will not cover because I don't know how to do an alignment yet. But I will cover my alignment process once I do the rear suspension and, you know, do the whole alignment in one shot for the car. But this basically covers the entire front suspension rebuild video series on this car. And yeah, thank you so much for following along and watching. And I will start tearing into the rear as soon as I can, and then we'll continue with another build series in the exact same fashion for the rear suspension. All my rear suspension stuff is here in these boxes. So thanks so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next videos. Goodbye.